Hello and welcome to the first ever Products for People podcast. We're excited to have you here. But what is this thing? Well, my brother Josh and myself are sitting down with key leaders from various industries. We're talking traditional products, certainly, B2B, nonprofits, government even, and really talking about what is being produced by an organization or packaged and what do users really want or need. Today, we have the privilege of having Alex Amado joining us, which I'm super excited about. Alex Amado's career has been all about creativity, marketing, and product. We're going to talk about the intersection of those things as it pertains to AI. So stick around for this. Alex's career has been most recently VP of Experience Maketing at Adobe and currently is an advisor at Vibes and Logic. Let's learn together. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to push a few things on this conversation. Creativity. It seems to be the bones.
I'm for it, by the way. I'm pro creativity.
Okay. That was my question.
Want to get that out of the way. There's no ambiguity.
Creativity and AI and how that's changed the game potentially with creativity. And like that is now out there that people can use. People can generate their own content, be creative, quote unquote, by utilizing these tools. This isn't the first instance of these tools, though. AI has been around for a little while, right? I mean, like I feel like you and I have both seen that, but we'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what you hear is this appeared overnight and kind of came out of nowhere. And the fact is that we've been working with AI for many decades. I mean, scientists and researchers have been working with AI for 50 years. And even with some of these language models and some of these generative concepts, since the 80s. So it is, it's that classic overnight success that when you actually look at it, has a multi-decade set of work that kind of went before it. It just has a moment of popular consciousness.
It's like an actor that makes it big, but it's been doing this for like 20 years.
What about the other 50? What about the 500 commercials I did before I got to the motion picture?
Yeah.
It's very much like that. And AI has been, at Adobe, we've been integrating AI into machine learning AI. The terms are, for all intents and purposes, used interchangeably, but machine learning seems less threatening, and it is just the process. That is the process of creating the data sets and the nodal networks that enable these outcomes. But we've been using this and building it into, Photoshop and Illustrator and Premiere and a lot of the digital marketing tools that Adobe creates in the Adobe Experience Cloud for well over a decade. And it's the exact same model that is what underlies, Midjourney and DALL-E. And it's that sort of same concept where we say we feed the computer a whole lot of data, a whole lot of examples. And, when you go into Adobe Lightroom, and you click the auto balance button, what that's doing is it's taking its history of billions of photographs that it's seen, and it's already distilled that down in a way that it can say, oh, this photo fits generally in this range, and it does a bunch of processes on your image. And you're like, oh, that looks so much better. Or occasionally you're like, they totally screwed up the photo. I'm going to undo that.
Those billions sucked.
Or just this photo has something about it that the algorithm hasn't picked up on.
Totally.
But yes, also billions of bad inputs does not equal one good input, which is a cautionary tale, I feel.
Yes, I think that is. Yeah.
But we've been building this stuff in, literally rev after rev. And up to this date, it's always been seen as tools to help creatives be faster. I mean, some of them sort of rode that edge. There was into Adobe XD. There was an auto resizing tool where you could sort of put a banner ad that you designed, or you could design a single banner ad and say, okay, I need it in these 11 dimensions for my ad run. And it would auto-populate those, cropping the images somewhat intelligently, reflowing text, changing font sizes. But, it did it with a lot of pre-programmed and AI-derived or machine learning-derived rules that helped it do a decent job. And then humans would go in
Yeah.
and nip and tuck and fix things.
It.
And but
Yeah.
it definitely saved time. And I had designers tell me that, they could do in an hour what would have taken them 6, or sometimes in 20 minutes if it gets it right. So super, super interesting to see that there's now an inflection point where we've gone from this tool is helping creatives to, okay, now this tool is helping anybody who can describe an outcome that it's looking for. And that is, that's a moment in time that we're definitely going to look back on and have opinions about in a couple of years for sure.
Geez, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Google. You just kind of said outcome and search, like how search was kind of a free for all, not great, but it's gotten smarter throughout the years using AI for a lot of time.
Yep.
And but also, like, it's about an outcome. You have to have, like, what is that thing in mind to get the thing? Do you feel like it's based upon also, the input into this machine, rather than just the machine, do your work and help me?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'm always, I paid a lot of attention to search for the last 20, 25 years. I ran teams that were SEO optimizers and teams that did paid search. And so the ways that humans search and just broad strokes about the underlying mechanic of these search engines are very native to me. And when I'm helping other people for some reason, somebody calls me for computer help, which I now have time to do. And they're like, I'm trying to find this thing. And I'm like, well, what search did you do? And Google. And they tell me, I'm like, why would you do that, sir? You would structure it this way. Cause after having done it for decades, you sort of have this intuitive sense of how to get better results out of the search. At least if you think a little bit like the machine. And I think that there's a strong corollary to what is happening currently in ChatGPT, in Adobe Firefly, in a lot of these tools, is you can get very different results depending on how you frame your query. In fact, they talk about it as, and this feels a little overblown to me, but I've heard the phrase prompt engineering, which is how do you structure and format your prompts, the prompts that you're putting into a ChatGPT or a Midjourney or Dolly to get the outcomes you want. And then what is a sequential set of steps and evolution? So you're a little bit, using this tool and refining if you're trying to get a very specific high quality outcome. And that almost becomes its own, if not its own specialization, its own skill. And I would predict that in the future, there are going to be people who are more successful in whatever their field is because they are really good. They've spent a lot of time or are just natively talented at structuring prompts in a way that get better outcomes from the machine. That's going to be a differentiator, which is a weird thing to think about. But you're right. There's a lot of commonality under there between search, getting good search results, and getting good results from these machines. But it's also worth noting that search results have changed over the last decade, right? Like it used to be,
using
if
AI.
you remember. Well, they're using AI and they're also following, and this is where things get a little sketchy, is Google is not, and this may shock some people, but Google is not an altruistic charitable organization. They are a company. And so what's happening is a lot more of those links now keep you on Google. It used to be every link sent you out to a destination to get your answer. And now the game is, how can we keep you on Google? Oh, let's look at Google reviews of the product. Let's look at Google Maps to see where that thing is. Let's answer the question without even having you leave the page, so you're still on Google. And just like doing good search prompts has changed, I think doing good large language model prompts and visual generative AI prompts is going to be an evolving process because the technologies themselves are going to evolve really, really rapidly.
Oh man. Yeah. yeah, I'm with you. And I think thank you for sharing that. One thing that you kind of brought up during what you were talking about is the kind of human element of inputting something, whatever that might be, and the output. Question I have, humans versus AI. AI being artificial intelligence trying to emulate human intelligence.
Right.
And there's a human.
It's very meta.
Right? It's very meta. And it's starting to become more creative within AI as far as what it's outputting. Learning from creative models, certainly, but definitely getting towards more creative, motion of like less prompts to get something bigger. What do you see the difference between like humans, AI, and just kind of what they can and cannot do, like as far as those things, or maybe the benefit of one versus the other, because it does seem like they're kind of overlapping in some areas, which is weird.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is totally weird. I think one of the things that is important to keep in mind is with these large language model and visual AI, visual generative AI tools, it's a 3-step process, not a 2-step process. Humans input the prompt, the computer comes back with the thing. And then the third step is humans judge the output, right? And actually that is a fundamental input into how these models work. A lot of people forget about this fact, but the models are not just, ChatGPT is not just suck in the entirety of the internet and Twitter and everything else and synthesize it, but there are thousands of very low paid, largely Southern Hemisphere English language speakers who are paid every day to sit there and hour on hour look at these results and grade them, and it inputs into the model in ways that are a little opaque even to the programmers. But there is a strong human element that's gone into that.
Yeah.
In terms of what comes, and we're continuing to train it by our responses when the outcomes come out. If we say, yes, that's fantastic, give me more, it's going to say, okay, well, that was a positive nodal connection. It's like a modeled on neurons in the brain. And if we say, no, that's terrible, try again, it's going to go, okay, bad, don't make that connection again. But at the end of the day, we are judging that output. And I think that there's going to continue to be a really big and important role in doing that work, right? And bringing, if I think about the art stuff, everybody, I think, envisions, billions of artists, hundreds of thousands of artists being put out of business. Which may or may not happen, but there is still going to be a role for judging the design, being a creative director effectively, right? Not necessarily pushing the pixels, or maybe pushing the pixels in edge cases to make something that lasts 10% better. But really you need human judgment to say, not only is this accurate, but like, is it right? Does it speak? Does it create emotion in somebody who is actually trained to look for things that will trigger emotion? And I think that is a uniquely, only humans can evaluate what is going to impact humans. The computer will get better and better at it over time, but I also think that humans will continue to change. Trends change really quickly. There will be a lot of things that will still need human evaluation to make them right for sort of public consumption. And so that's always going to be a piece. And then I think there are those completely incongruous left turns, right? The whole modeling that's happened in these applications is taking material that has already been created and synthesizing it. And the right turns that creativity can take, the unexpected combinations, the really out of the box kind of, hey, nobody's ever tried this before, let's try this. Nobody's ever put this and this together before, let's do that and see if it works, and really commit to it and work on it. That is something that I think will also be a strong human-led activity for many, many decades to come, hopefully forever, but forever is a long time and things are changing fast.
Yeah, well, I think that's a solid point. I mean, creativity. I think looking at art, I was an art major. So like you look at Duchamp, like put a urinal on the wall, like what?
Right.
No one would have thought of that, right? Or not a computer.
Exactly. And now all of the Dadaist movement is incorporated into what ChatGPT has seen, what the visual design, Midjourney's, Firefly, et cetera, have seen.
Sure.
But what's the next urinal? What's the next urinal? What's the next? This is not
a white canvas on the wall.
Next?
Something.
Exactly. And there will always be artists at the edge of creativity pushing us to by creating work that makes us think, makes us react, makes us offended and upset. Like there's a whole variety of work that is really cutting edge. It does definitely have implications for the humans in this field, though. And the ones that I worry about most, the thing that I haven't, and I'm curious your thoughts about this, but the thing that I haven't totally wrapped my head around is, I believe if you are a creative director, or somebody whose business is taking art that may not be quite right and helping get it to completely right and the way it needs to be, I think you've got a job for decades to come. If you are a cutting edge artist who is doing, breaking things, the next urinal, the next controversial piece of creative, doing, large scale installations, things that require vision and exactly, Banksy, whatever it is. If you're that person, you're fine. What I worry about most is the kids coming out of art school, because so much of how you learn to get to either of those levels is by doing the routine everyday work, doing 500 layouts in a year and getting feedback from professionals that say, these 200 were great. These, getting those creative directors to help you, or teachers or the internet or whatever, peer feedback, help you build that skill. I really do worry about how that's going to happen if, as a corporation, we're looking at it and saying, hey, I need, 50 mediocre layouts. I kind of don't care how good they are. I can hire, one designer and that's 2 months output, or I can pay, $20 a month for Firefly or whatever it is and have somebody generate that in a week or less. And that is a gap that I think is going to be something that is hard to stitch together. What do you think?
Jeez, I don't disagree. Something repeatable is kind of seems like that's learning. Machine could do that.
Yeah.
Learn. And if it's repeatable into stamping something else that is like that thing, anything that falls in that category sounds like that's interesting.
It feels like we've shifted our energies as humans from training other humans to training machines. And I think that's a risk that is leaving the next generation of creative artists, in a way, kind of leaving them on their own, right? A lot of those formative experiences come in the early days when you're not producing good stuff, but you're getting good feedback on it so that you can learn and you can be the next creative director. So I don't exactly know how that gets resolved, but I'm confident that we will figure it out, because we will always need and respond to artists who are doing cutting edge things. And we will always need somebody to take the output of these generative tools and evaluate that for what's going to work, what's actually going to cause the reaction we want, what reflects the brand, what reflects the tone, what's going to break through. We need those roles, and we have to find, I think, new ways to get people who can fill those roles for us.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, a couple things to bring back to product.
Yeah.
So one, UX. You kind of were getting into repeatable, and where my mind was going when you're talking there about repeatable, don't just do what's done before. I'm like, oh crap, that's user testing. That's, you are getting volume, when you do something like that for a product to be the flows, CTAs, usability, all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like UX might fall into this category at some point?
I think it is absolutely going to, and I think UX is going to be vulnerable in a way that, fine art, photography, impact-oriented copywriting are not, in that UX is very much about building systems that are intuitive to the user without having to train them on it. And that limits you to a certain number of patterns. It's new problems that you're trying to solve, but you're solving them with a lot of existing patterns.
Sure.
And I think that kind of pattern matching and then consuming large quantities of data is something that computers will be very good at, I think, very soon. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if you're going for highly functional UX, computer output is going to be a really strong contender, especially if you can build a cycle of, prototype, test, and iterate. I could see computers coming up with highly functional UIs that need only minimal human intervention to them. If you're looking to break paradigm, if you're looking to do something novel, if you're looking to invent the next breakthrough UI that, then everybody will be copying, it's not going to be made through this replication and iteration process. Yeah. But again, it's a job that feels like it is going to be more about prompt engineering and direct input and user selection than it is going to be about sitting down and pushing pixels to make that UI exactly the way that you think it should be in your experience.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So when thinking about the products themselves that have AI and creativity involved, how do you see them changing in the next few years? I know they have changed under your watch and going forward, but how do you see some adjustments going with both included with products within creativity that use AI and a human?
It's, I think it's the good news is in the way that a Dolly or a Midjourney is enabling non-artists to create some form of art-like visual. I will step back from calling it art. The same technologies are really being aggressively built by companies like Adobe and others into the tools that they use every day. So Adobe Firefly, their generative visual AI content
creation tool
technology, is built into Photoshop, right? You can do a content-aware fill that is actually filled with something you describe rather than something it derives from the surrounding image. So that same technology should be making artists, designers, illustrators, photographers faster and more quickly able to realize their vision because of the speed with which it solves, these problems. And so just like we've talked about, it's been a steady climb of, hey, how do I make you faster and better able to take the thing that's in your head and get it into pixels on the screen? That has also taken a quantum leap forward. And I think that is going to be a thing that that buys a lot of time for the design community, the illustration community, to continue to stay ahead, because what you're going to find is that inevitably stuff that they are making in Illustrator, Photoshop, XD, etc., is still going to be much higher quality than the thing that an untrained artist both creates inside these tools and then selects without the design training that we sort of talked about, because you're just doing it based on your personal gut, not based on, years of studying good design and what humans respond to and really having that framework. So designers will for a very long time have the upper hand. And hopefully the tools will help make them so fast that they can continue to contribute and be a material part of how communications are created. But it is a little scary. Like, you could totally see this going the other way. You could see, I guarantee you there will be companies that say, I don't need a design team anymore. I just need an intern with, with Dolly, and we're just going to commit to that. And that's our output. It is a little
Yeah.
terrifying. And some of those things will, through luck or happenstance or whatever, be successful. And
Yeah.
so it's not a totally rosy picture. It's
Yeah.
also going to mean that the expected output of work from designers and illustrators is going to go up, 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 up. Not that it hasn't been already, but there is going to be an expectation that you can do more. We haven't talked about this at all, but there's also the code generation side of this.
Yeah.
A lot of engineering heavy companies are building in code quota increases, assuming that their engineers and coders are going to be 10, 20, 30% more efficient because they assume that they're using ChatGPT or Codex or other tools like that to enhance and speed up their coding, eliminating a lot of the simple structuring and them actually having to go in and code only for the most complex and specific of tasks. It's a weird thing where technology both makes us faster, but then corporations and capitalism says, okay, if it's making you faster, I expect you to do more. So it is a bit of a turning up the treadmill effect happening right now.
Oh man. Yeah. I've heard something similar about development, but design, that makes a lot of sense that's next on a list, if not there already. Well, I really appreciate your time, Alex. I just hope to close out with a couple things. First, I would love to ask a question. What gives you joy outside of, the work part? Like just a question about that in your personal life. And then secondly, advice that you'd give to anyone that might follow in your shoes or something close to that in your career. So what gives you joy?
The first one's easy. As I stepped out of the, very long hours and intense environment of Adobe, I've been able to do a bunch of things that I have always wanted to do. I've been able to spend a lot more time with my family. I spend a lot more time with my dog. I get to walk all the time instead of just paying somebody to walk him. And those are great joys. And I've also adopted both hobbies and business pursuits that I'm involved in. So I spend more time woodworking now. I'm learning how to do wood turning, making bowls and making pens and table legs and stuff like that, which is really fun. And doing some furniture and things.
What about those business
doing a lot
pursuits
of things like
too?
that.
For fun.
And then the business pursuits, for fun. But it is, I have 35 years of experience. And so I get to turn that exclusively to things that I really want to turn it to. So I would say the two things that I'm putting the most of my energy into are a startup that I'm involved in. I'm on the board of called Vibes and Logic. And Vibes and Logic is a very early stage startup, which is doing really cool stuff. What we've done is we've built a new digital media asset class. And the idea is that when you go to a concert, when you go to listen to a DJ, when you go to a symphony or a jazz hall, a huge amount of the experience is not just coming through your ears. It's the visuals that go along with it, the lighting at those concerts, the way that the storytelling is coming through other channels. In fact, it turns out that if you look at the brain, neuroscientists look at the brain, 80% of our sensorium, 80% of the way the brain processes sensory information is visual. And so when you are just listening to Spotify, you're missing 80% of, like a concert experience or a DJ experience. We can bring a lot more of that home by creating this new digital media asset class. We call it Vibes. And the idea is that this encodes smart lighting data, all kinds of visuals you can design and customize. And it does this in 3D space so that you can listen to music in your home through Vibes and Logic, and it will work with your smart lighting to create mood and musically synced data, but not just sort of thrumming to the beat. Like it understands the entire structure of a song. It understands the emotional content of a song and kind of brings the music into the lighting and the visuals into that space. You can do it on flat screens. You can do it on a 10-foot television. You can do it on your phone,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do it in 3D space as well. You can do it in the
That's
3D
awesome.
goggles. So it's a really cool
Yeah.
technology, and we've also created a design tool that helps musicians and producers and DJs create the surround in the digital space that we want, that they want to communicate. Really exciting. And of course, it's got an AI driven component to it to help
There you
you
go.
um, shortcut
Yeah.
and get to a better result faster. And
Yeah.
it's got an incredible team behind it. So many amazing people. So really excited about that, spending time on that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I spend time on is working with UCLA, mentoring MBA students, working as a judge, doing a little bit of lecturing. So I'm excited to continue to sort of invest in the next generation of business leaders who are dealing
Yeah.
with this next set of challenges that that we're talking about now, as well as many others. So those are the things that I'm getting to do now that
That's
I have
awesome.
much more control over my time. Thank you. It's
Yeah,
been a
that's
lot of
so
fun.
cool.
Been a great
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, all of that sounds great. I saw some of your woodworking work way back when on video calls.
Oh,
I would see it in the background.
That's right.
And the vibes thing, that sounds awesome. So,
Vibes and Logic.
Super cool. Yeah, vibes and logic. So, last question. What advice would you impart on someone that wants to follow your footsteps, progress in their career? What would you give as advice?
So I think there's a couple of pieces of general advice and then some very specific advice relevant to this conversation. The general advice that I always give is two things. One, find mentors. Find people who will help you in your career, whether formally or informally. Find people you admire and respect and ask them if you can go and buy them a cup of coffee and ask them some questions. Doesn't have to be formal mentoring, but get people who can give you good advice and can help you think about things in a broader way. I do this often for professionals, for students, for other people. I had many great mentors at Adobe and at previous places of employment who fundamentally shaped my view. But I think this becomes harder in a Zoom-based world, right? You and I are not sitting in the same physical location.
Right.
Many employees are now remote. You don't have a cafeteria where you are going to bump into somebody and say, hey, can I buy you a coffee next week? And you can give me your thoughts on this project I'm working on or whatever it is. It gets a lot harder. And it gets a little more formal and awkward. It takes out that ease that we had in the last few decades of, I just bump into somebody and I say, hey, will you sit down with me for 30, 45 minutes and share your good thoughts? People are often flattered to be asked. And I think that's something that young business leaders often forget is they get nervous about the rejection. Just ask. More times than not, you will get a positive answer. That's the first general piece of advice. And the second piece of advice is take assignments that you are not comfortable with. It has been a key to my ability to sort of rise through the ranks at the corporate world. It has been something that I've done throughout my entire career. You do not have to be an expert and know A to Z how you're going to solve a problem before you volunteer to accept that problem. Lean in, take projects you're uncomfortable with, take projects that your managers need solved, take the next hard thing and spend the time and energy to figure it out. You will learn a lot. You'll get a lot of credit if it succeeds. You'll learn even more if it fails, to be honest, because sometimes those are the best lessons. Just get out of your comfort zone. Doing your job and doing it competently is not really a recipe for rapid rise and sort of ascension in the corporate world, if that's your goal. And if your goal is to just do your job because that's the work you love, that's fine. But if your goal is to really expand, it's all about stepping into things that you're uncomfortable with. And then I think the third piece of advice, which is really relevant to what we've been talking about today, is get really good at using these new AI tools. Get really good at figuring out how to use ChatGPT to edit your content, push your thinking, brainstorm with it if you don't have a human to brainstorm with. Everybody's worried that ChatGPT is going to take their job, and that is not at all the worry. The worry is somebody who's good at ChatGPT is going to take your job. Be that person. It's a tool. Those who use it are going to succeed more often and faster than those who reject it. And that would be my advice for younger people looking to grow their careers.
Oh, that's great. Alex, thank you so much for your time. It's so good to see you again. And
it's such a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Excellent.
Bye.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Alex. Okay. See you.
Bye.
Hi, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate it if you could leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to help spread the word. Our podcast is produced and designed by Jeremy and Joshua Wold. You can find our show archive and transcripts at productsforpeoplepodcast.com. We look forward to seeing you for our next episode, and in the meantime, we hope you experience some really great products. Thanks.